On the day of the wedding, Mason did not attend. When I video called him, he was wearing a windbreaker, hiking in Tibet. "Honey, the wedding is just a ceremony, and besides, we already have our marriage certificate. You won't hold it against me, will you?" Behind him, a junior peeked out. "Nina, I just made a bet with Mason, and I didn't expect he would actually dare to join me on a spontaneous trip." On that day, I became the laughingstock of everyone and developed a fear of crowds. After Mason returned, he hurried over to explain things to me. I curled up in the corner, my voice as soft as a mosquito yet resolute. "It's okay, let's get a divorce. After all, we didn't even have a wedding." On the big screen, Mason's smile was magnified to the point of distortion. He was wearing a windbreaker, carrying a large travel backpack, and looking at the camera with a bright smile. "Honey, surprise! I've come to Tibet." I was wearing a wedding dress, standing on stage with the officiant. Under the gaze of everyone, I felt completely frozen. Mason was still chattering away, and it was clear that he was very, very excited right now. "Honey, you won't blame me, right?" "You shouldn't, you're so generous." I opened my mouth, but my throat felt blocked by something, and I couldn't speak. After a hard cough, I finally found a hoarse voice that barely sounded like my own and managed to say, "Mason, today is our wedding." Mason tilted his head slightly, looking somewhat innocent. This was his habitual gesture. Whenever he made me angry, he would tilt his head and act cute, and I would calm down. But this time I couldn't find a reason to be angry. The wedding was just a ceremony. We had already obtained our marriage certificate. Whether or not we had this ceremony didn't change the fact that we were already husband and wife. "Honey, we are still young. When we are young, we shouldn't be so rigid, let's be a little more open-minded." Below, there were scattered murmurs from the guests. The host stood on the stage, awkwardly unsure of how to react. "Mason, today is our wedding." I repeat once more. Mason's expression changed slightly, showing some impatience. But he probably knew he had overstepped, so he could only endure in silence. He glanced outside the camera, sighed irritably, "Nina, don't be unreasonable. You haven't even asked me the reason for coming to Tibet, yet you keep harping on about my absence from the wedding. Isn't that a bit inconsiderate?" His phone shook, and a petite figure flashed across the large screen. The figure was dressed in a red windbreaker, looking neat and professional, clearly a seasoned traveler. I suddenly thought of someone, my junior from Mason's school, Tina. She is a backpacker, loves extreme sports, enjoys adventurous travel, and likes to travel on a whim. She claims to have visited all the popular and obscure attractions both domestically and internationally, and has even explored some places that no one else dares to go. If it were her, it would make sense. Tina had pursued Mason, but he resolutely rejected her at the time. I wonder how the two of them ended up entangled together this time. As if to confirm my suspicion, a head suddenly popped up in the frame. Two heads were very close together, the kind that could kiss with just a turn of the face. Tina's slightly flushed little face appeared, smiling as she greeted me. "Hi, Nina, did you miss me?" I stared at the two of them without saying a word. Tina moved a little closer to Mason, almost pressing against his chest. Mason indulgently wrapped her in a loose embrace, his arms not touching any inappropriate places, but such a measured action was painfully eye-catching no matter how you looked at it. "Nina, I just made a bet with Mason, and I didn't expect him to actually dare to join me on a spontaneous trip. But don't worry, Nina, I will definitely keep an eye on Mason and won't let him have any romantic encounters along the way." Mason gently tapped Tina on the head and softly scolded, "What nonsense are you talking about? I am wholeheartedly devoted to Nina, how could I possibly seek an affair?" Tina playfully touched her head and chuckled foolishly, "Yeah, Mason, we all know how you feel about Nina." They unexpectedly started chatting over there without a care in the world. "Mason, see, Nina still blames me for missing our wedding. You should help me talk to her." Tina covered her mouth, looking astonished, "No way, no way. Nowadays, young people don't even have weddings anymore, that's so outdated. Everyone is into destination weddings now." After saying that, she quickly glanced at the camera, her face showing embarrassment. I'm sorry, Nina, I didn't mean to say you're old-fashioned, but young people like us really don't have weddings. Mason has told me he wants to get married while traveling, which is why I invited him to Tibet with me. Nina, try to be more open-minded. Just think of this trip with Mason as an experience of traveling for a wedding. When the time comes, I'll write a guide to help you avoid any pitfalls, so you won't run into trouble when you come. Oh, I won't talk to you anymore, Nina, the Potala Palace is just ahead, and I want to go take pictures. With that, Tina ran off. With her chattering gone, the entire banquet hall became much quieter. The guests all widened their eyes, gripping their hands tightly, holding their breath, afraid to miss any detail of this grand spectacle. Mason and I fell silent as well. I wanted to question Mason, to curse him out, to let it all go and make him lose face in front of so many guests. But I hate that I am someone who loses control of tears, hate that I am so weak. I am already sobbing uncontrollably, my mind a complete mess, and even saying a coherent sentence has become a problem, let alone asking Mason for an explanation. All right, Nina, don't be angry anymore, I'm already here, we can discuss all the issues when I get back, that's it, I'm hanging up now. In the next moment, Mason cut off the video. Everything happened too quickly, so fast that it was impossible to react. In the hearts of those guests, I was deeply branded with the mark of being abandoned. My parents have been teachers their whole lives, maintaining their dignity all this time, and now they can't stay calm. My dad pointed at Mason's parents, his face turning bright red. You all. It's simply absurd. Mason's parents were also caught off guard by this lawsuit, they never expected that the marriage, which seemed so certain, would turn out like this. Mason's dad and my dad are colleagues, and he quickly pulled my dad aside to explain that they were unaware of the situation, insisting that when Mason returns, he must give us an explanation. I squatted on the stage, my head buzzing, all the sounds felt distant. I thought, maybe it would be better to die right now. If I died, I wouldn't have to deal with all this nonsense, nor would I have to face so many strange looks. A hand reached out with a pack of tissues. Wipe your tears. I looked up to see the flustered host, his other hand clutching a tissue that had wiped away sweat. In a way, we were both in the same boat. Mason spent a month in Tibet. During that month, I realized I was unwell. Social anxiety disorder. This is something I secretly found out online. I feel it corresponds with my symptoms, so I believe I have this illness. In fact, I am even grateful for this illness. Because after Mason learned I was sick, he returned early from Tibet, he had planned to stay there for 3 months. Later I found out that I not only have social anxiety disorder, but also a psychological condition called somatization disorder. The more Mason cares about my illness, the more I rely on it, hoping my condition deepens a little more, and then a little more, to attract his attention. But at this moment, I still didn't know that what Mason cared about was not me or my illness, but his own reputation. He also didn't expect that the video from the wedding day would be projected onto the big screen, watched by everyone in its entirety. I never expected this matter would escalate so seriously. Almost overnight, Mason became the subject of discussion on Facebook, and whenever people mentioned him, they sighed and shook their heads. So he needed an opportunity to change his image. This opportunity was his plan to hold a grand apology ceremony specifically for me. The entire ceremony was to be live-streamed on his Facebook, and all the guests who attended the wedding were on the invitation list, eagerly waiting for the sequel to that previous drama to air. Mason seemed oblivious to the unknown. After much persuasion, he finally managed to take me out of my parents' house. Along the way, I nervously watched every person passing by, as if any one of them could pull out a gun from their pocket and shoot me at any moment. Mason, where exactly are you taking me? I'm a bit scared, can't we go back home? Mason held my hand, walking ahead, taking the lead. I struggled to keep up with his pace, having to jog to catch up. Oh Nina, I said I would give you a surprise, so just wait patiently. The weather is so nice today, you wouldn't want to be cooped up at home, would you? He didn't notice my fear at all. I wanted to say that it wasn't that I didn't want to go out, but that I was afraid. Ever since the wedding, I've started to fear people. I am afraid of crowds, afraid of people's strange gazes, afraid that I might do something wrong and make others uncomfortable, and thus I become the subject of their discussions. But seeing his indifferent attitude, I swallowed the words I wanted to say. After all, he wouldn't listen. Mason's pace suddenly quickened, pulling me off balance. Ding 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 ding, Nina, look over there. Mason gestured for me to look 10 meters ahead. I looked over and saw Tina sitting in the middle of the crowd, holding a large bouquet of flowers. Surrounding her were people watching the spectacle and others recording with cameras. Woo woo yang yang. Mason let go of my hand. I instinctively wanted to grab him, hoping to seek a safe harbor. He didn't notice, but instead ran to Tina's side, picked up another bouquet from the ground, knelt on one knee facing the camera, and said, "Ms. Nina, I know I was wrong about the wedding, please forgive me." Tina also knelt down and said the same thing. The crowd erupted in cheers. Promise him, promise him. Forgive him, forgive him. Marry him, marry him. It was so noisy. The people in my view multiplied, seeming to create many shadows. The voices in my ears faded in and out. The voices that urged me ultimately formed 3 words in my mind: go die. This voice weighed down on me, making it hard to breathe. I truly couldn't catch my breath. Mason. I wanted him to save me, but my voice was too small, and he was too immersed in saving his own image to hear me at all. I slowly crouched down, sat down, and then lay on my side, finally losing consciousness. When I woke up, I only saw my parents. Both of their eyes were red, and my mom spoke with a nasal tone. "Good daughter, listen to your mom. I've contacted a very famous psychologist for you, shall we go talk to him?" I nodded. My heart is sick, I know it, and I am willing to cooperate with the treatment. I will no longer hope to use my illness to gain Mason's attention. Because from the wedding to the apology ceremony, I finally understand that Mason is not my true love. He doesn't care about me, at least for now, he doesn't care about me. Mom, I will cooperate with the treatment. By the way, where's my phone? I'll tell Mason, let's get a divorce. From now on, you have a daughter who has been divorced, will you look down on me? My mom's tears fell suddenly, tightly gripping my hand. As parents, how could we ever look down on our own daughter? We both cried in each other's arms, and after we finished crying, I continued to look for my phone. But my parents became evasive, their eyes darting around. Mom, where's my phone? My mother, unable to hide the truth any longer, could only repeatedly warn me to stay calm no matter what I saw. I opened my phone and was bombarded with messages. It was a video taken out of context, showing me suddenly gasping for breath in a crowd, clutching my chest and collapsing to the ground, my body convulsing after I fell. The title of the video was, "Friend Suddenly Faints, Suspected to Have a Mental Illness, Does Anyone Know a Good Psychiatrist?" Friend? Is the person who posted the video my friend? I don't know, but my symptoms have worsened. I began to fear being around more than one person at a time. Sometimes, just thinking about the apology ceremony that Mason and Tina held for me that day makes me want to die. After leaving the hospital, I locked myself in my room every day, with the curtains drawn tight so that not a single ray of sunlight could seep through, otherwise I would feel unsafe. After the people on Facebook learned that I had a mental illness, they all began to sympathize with Mason, as if it was my mental illness that forced him to run away from the wedding. Those people have got it all backwards, I know, but no one believes me. Mason's image was successfully salvaged, and he even gained a wave of sympathy. He came to see me in a rather good mood. The first thing he did upon entering was complain that the room was too dark, and he casually pulled back the curtains for me. "You've been cooped up in this room all day without seeing the sun, and it's not going to get any better." In response, I let out a sharp scream. "Pull the curtains shut," I shouted. He stared at me in disbelief, and with a face full of disappointment, he pulled the curtains shut. "Nina, after all this time we've known each other, I've just realized that I've never really understood you. You're such a dramatic person, it's just a wedding you missed, right? Must you force me to attend the wedding while I can't resist? Now that it's already happened, you're here putting on this act, playing the victim, hoping to gain sympathy from others? I curled up in the blanket, only revealing my head after confirming that no sunlight was coming in. It wasn't me who pressured you to get married, I said. What? He didn't hear clearly. I raised my voice a bit. It wasn't me who pressured you to get married, it was you who proposed to me and took the initiative to plan the wedding. He was taken aback, a hint of guilt in his eyes. Yes. It was me who wanted to hold the wedding, but as my girlfriend, my wife, can't you see that I don't like weddings? Aren't weddings just for others to see? We stand on stage like two monkeys, letting others judge us. Why didn't you stop me? If we had agreed to get married while traveling from the start, we wouldn't have had so many issues. He paused and then said, ultimately, it's because we lack understanding between us. Then let's get a divorce. I said calmly, my heart aching to the extreme. It's not the pain of wanting to divorce him that hurts, but the sudden realization that after knowing him for over a decade, I still failed to see through his hypocritical facade, and it pains me to think of all the years of feelings I wasted. Divorce? He exclaimed, divorce, sure, that's what you said. I won't lose anything anyway. These days, men who have been divorced are more desirable, but for you women, it's different. Once divorced, you're considered second-hand goods, who would want you then? I ignored his twisted reasoning and nodded firmly, saying, that's right, I said it, we are getting a divorce. He fell silent. After a moment, Mason came over and tucked the blanket around me, gently saying, I know you're talking nonsense, don't think about it. Tomorrow, I'll take you to see a psychologist. He tucked in the quilt for me, and I deliberately pulled it back in a fit of pique. You can go now. When we meet next time, I hope it will be when we are getting the divorce certificate. Mason, with a fierce exterior but a timid heart, paced back and forth at the bedroom door, sighed several times, and pointed at me a few times as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he said nothing. He slammed the door and left. My mom pushed the door open a crack and quietly observed me. When I caught her, she simply came in but spoke cautiously. Nina, we agreed to go see the doctor, you can't let your mom down this time. I felt a bit amused and a bit like crying. Clearly, it was others who hurt me, yet it was my parents who were being punished. I nodded with tears in my eyes, don't worry, Mom, it definitely won't happen again. Mason, I won't let you hurt me anymore. I saw a psychologist intermittently for over a month. During this time, I didn't reach out to Mason, and of course, he didn't contact me either. Later, I could go out to see the doctor by myself, without my mom following me. However, I still couldn't stay in crowded places for long, or I would feel scared. Today is another day to see the doctor, but early in the morning, I received a message from Andy. No need to come to the hospital today, we have outdoor activities, see you later at the small square downstairs. I pursed my lips, feeling a bit resistant. I know the small square downstairs at the hospital, there are many people, and all kinds of people at that. Usually, I just hurry past there, but after thinking it over, I decided to go this time. Nina, over here. From a distance, I heard Andy's voice. He was sitting on a stone bench, waving at me. I have to pass through a group of elderly people playing shuttlecock and walk past 2 tables of mahjong before I can reach the doctor. Nina, you can do it. I clenched my fists, slightly closed my eyes, and walked up to Andy with my whole body tense. He reached out a hand to me, gesturing for me to sit down, and smiled encouragingly, saying, you did great. I swallowed hard, still feeling a bit scared, and instinctively grabbed his hand. His hand was long and fair, with a mole the size of a grain of rice right in the middle of his wrist. Suddenly, Andy put his arm around my shoulder and whispered in my ear, look at those 2 elderly people over there, their relationship is so good. I followed his gaze and saw 2 elderly people with gray hair, leaning on each other while watching others dance in the square. And over there, are those people discussing the dance moves? I looked again and saw a group of ladies dressed in pink satin outfits, holding fans and gesturing, as if they were indeed practicing the dance moves. And over there. Andy guided me to see many people. Look, you've been in this crowded little square for almost an hour, doesn't it feel okay? It's not scary, right? At this moment, I suddenly realized that aside from the beginning, I actually hadn't been afraid of the crowd here. Nina? As I was talking to Andy, a familiar voice suddenly interrupted. It was Mason. Following the sound, I saw Mason and Tina standing together, looking at me with an expression of disbelief. Tina hadn't even had time to let go of Mason's hand. Andy squinted slightly, looking at the two of them. Well, Nina, I asked why you wanted to divorce me. It turns out there was someone else outside. Have you betrayed me? His voice was loud, and all the passers-by stopped to watch. My body trembled slightly as the familiar fear surged back. Suddenly, a warm hand grasped mine and gave it a gentle squeeze. It's okay, I'm here. Andy looked at me seriously and said. A surge of unprecedented courage suddenly rose in my heart, and I returned him a smile. Mason was stung by my smile and began to shout loudly. You two dog lovers, how dare you be all lovey-dovey in front of me? Nina, am I giving you face? Does this person know you're a lunatic? He probably doesn't, or he would have left you long ago. I stepped forward and slapped Mason across the face, knocking his remaining words back at him. He covered his face, looking at me in disbelief. You dare hit me? As he spoke, he raised his hand to hit me. But his hand was blocked by another hand. Hitting your wife, what kind of man is that? Mason's face instantly turned pale, his brows tightly furrowed. Seeing this, Tina hurried to pry Andy's hand away, but she was caught by Andy's other hand and couldn't move. With this graceful posture, I gathered my courage and said to Mason, first, we are not a couple of dogs, Andy is my psychologist. Second, I do have a mental illness, but you and the person next to you know best why I am sick. Third, I have proposed divorce to you, but you refused, then turned around and held hands with another woman. Tell me, what is your relationship with her? It can't just be a close friend, right? Mason and Tina looked at me in surprise. They seemed unable to comprehend how I, who was usually so clumsy with words and prone to tears, had suddenly become so sharp-tongued. Mason, in front of so many people today, I once again solemnly propose a divorce. If you do not agree, I can only file for divorce in court, and then our two families will truly be at odds. After saying this, I took Andy and left the crowd. Later, Andy sent me a video accompanied by 3 laughing emojis. I clicked on the video, which showed what happened when I ran into Mason at the small square this evening. I don't know who among the onlookers recorded it and posted it online. There were already many comments under the video, most of which were insults. I thought they were directed at me, but upon closer inspection, I realized they were aimed at Mason and Tina. Those in the know have linked the previously sensational apology ceremony and the events at the wedding, and Mason has certainly stirred up the wrath of netizens. 3 of the people involved were the main characters in the recent apology ceremony. Why hasn't this drama aired yet? Isn't that woman mentally ill? I am a hotel staff member, and the wedding of the male and female leads took place at our hotel. However, on the day of the wedding, the male lead actually eloped with the woman who was holding his arm and went to Tibet. Considering the context, could the female lead's mental illness have been triggered by the male lead and that mistress? Wow, the implications above are chilling. You might be onto something. That mistress, why does she look more and more familiar? Isn't she that quite famous travel blogger? It really seems to be her, with the IDT on shoe. It's actually her. At the other woman can go to hell. Is this your husband's green tea friend? ID the other woman can go to hell. Damn it, it's this shameless woman. Spoiled mistress, which sister is she messing with this time? As I read through the comments, I actually uncovered new information. When that user ID the other woman can go to hell appeared, many people in the comments recognized her. One by one, they called her sister with such warmth. The other woman can go to hell must have live-streamed catching her husband cheating, and at that time, the face of that mistress wasn't revealed, only a few people who knew her recognized it was Tina. But once this video came out, everything Tina had done was exposed. It turned out she was a habitual mistress, always claiming to love traveling, adventure, and budget trips. But in reality, behind every place she visited, there was a financial backer funding her. These backers were some travel buddies she had recruited. ID mistresses can go to hell. That shameless woman even called me using my ex-husband's phone, saying she was experiencing the travel destination for our 10th wedding anniversary and conveniently warned me about potential pitfalls. I originally thought she was just a simple travel enthusiast, but it turns out she was traveling to my ex-husband's bed. I remember, I witnessed the entire process of catching them in the act, and not being able to livestream it has always been my regret. She looks a bit familiar. It seems I caught her when I was helping my best friend catch her cheating partner. In just half an hour, 3 netizens have come forward to say that Tina is the mistress who has intruded into their marriage. I finished watching the drama, turned off the video, and sent Mason a message. If you have time tomorrow, let's get a divorce. Mason's call came in immediately. I answered. I will not agree to a divorce. Are you waiting for me to file for it? Fine, but it will just take some time and effort. Mason was silent for a moment. I was wrong this afternoon. I couldn't control myself when I saw you with another man. I will pay more attention in the future. Can we not get a divorce? No way. I hung up the phone. There's no point in continuing the conversation. It's just going to be a circular argument about whether to get a divorce or not. Since he doesn't agree, I'll just file for divorce. I'm determined to leave this marriage. Mason's message popped up on my phone again. I saw a really cute puppy after work today. You used to say you wanted to have a dog. Shall we go buy one? This is the 18th message from Mason today. I haven't replied to any of them. It turns out Mason still remembers that I like puppies. When I was a child, I had a little dog at my grandmother's house, a small white dog that I named Snowball. Snowball passed away during my second year of high school, and since then, I haven't raised another dog. It's not that I don't want to have one, but Mason doesn't like dogs. For his sake, I didn't dare to mention Snowball much, and could only write about my memories of him in my private space on QQ. I just didn't expect that on this night, Mason actually brought a dirty little dog to my house. It was a little mutt about 2 months old, all wet and dirty, but with incredibly bright eyes. Mason was holding it and smiling at me with a silly grin. Nina, this is the one I encountered on my way to find you. It must have been sent by heaven. Our fate is not yet over. I looked at Mason, who was also soaked, and it was hard to say what I felt inside. If he had been like this earlier, how could we have ended up like this? The sheep have run away, and now it's too late to fix the pen. I didn't let him in, nor did I take the puppy. Mason held the puppy and smiled for a while, but when he saw I was unmoved, he withdrew his smile and put the dog on the ground. The puppy immediately ran to the corner, curled up, and started to shiver. Nina, I am sincerely trying to salvage our marriage. After all these years of feelings, I don't want those beautiful memories to become a thing of the past. I looked him over and let out a cold laugh. Was all of this caused by me? He looked very bad, with a sense of being exposed and guilty, and his tone wasn't good either, so I came to beg you. Then I beg you too, if it's not to ask me to pick up the divorce certificate, then please don't appear in front of me, okay? After saying that, I slammed the door shut. Then I immediately crouched down to look through the peephole. My mom walked over and asked, "What are you looking at? You're not getting soft-hearted, are you?" I quickly raised a finger to my lips and shushed. My mom also looked puzzled as she leaned against the door to listen. Mason left the elevator, and for some reason, his way of walking seemed a bit strange, almost like he was uncoordinated. I opened the door and carefully brought in the dirty little bundle he had forgotten in the corner, saying to my mom, I knew he wouldn't take the dog with him. The puppy stared at me and my mom with its round black eyes, then curled up to sleep, though it wasn't shaking as much anymore. After my mom and I gave the puppy a bath, I realized it was a pure white puppy, very much like a Snowball, and I named it Urkiu. While we were bathing Urkiu, my mom was still scolding Mason, calling him hypocritical and ruthless in achieving his goals. If we hadn't taken this dog in, it would likely have become a stray. I wasn't surprised, Mason has always been like this. He seems flawless on the surface, but anyone with clear eyes can see through his hypocrisy and selfishness. In the following days, Mason did not continue to bombard me with messages. But he started to act like another fool. Mason registered an account on a short video platform and posted a message on Facebook and various social media platforms. He wants to hold a grand wedding for me again. In the past few days, he has been updating the wedding planning progress on the short video platform, from meetings with the planning company, to venue selection, to wedding dress customization, and then to on-site decoration and wedding segments. He announced every detail through short videos. In just a few days, his account has gained over 100,000 followers. Some informed netizens scolded him. But more were supporters of him. To be honest, if I hadn't gone through all of this, I would have been moved by his sincerity. Unfortunately, I've seen through him, although it wasn't early, thankfully it's not too late. Half a month later, I received another call from Mason. The short video he posted this morning was about setting up the wedding venue, so I know what this call means without even thinking. Therefore, I didn't answer. He persevered and even started a live stream. In the footage, he was wearing a well-fitted suit, his hair meticulously styled, with a groom's boutonniere on his chest, holding a custom bouquet in his arms, sitting in the wedding car on his way to my house. I scoffed, "It's summer vacation, and my parents are also off work. Our whole family left for a trip abroad 2 days ago. This time, he is destined not to receive his bride." Because several months ago, he had personally pushed his bride into the spotlight. Sure enough, after knocking on the door for a long time with no response, Mason began to panic. He grabbed a neighbor to ask for information. "They left for a trip abroad 2 days ago, didn't you, as the son-in-law, go with them?" The neighbor said, looking at Mason with a puzzled expression. Mason's expression suddenly changed. He sat down dejectedly at my doorstep. The live stream comments had everything, but Mason was completely uninterested in watching. I thought for a moment and registered a short video account, sending him a reminder to join the live stream. "Nina." Mason suddenly sat up straight, his eyes bursting with hope. "Mason." I gently called out to him. "Nina, will you come back? Let's get married again today. If you still don't forgive me, I can propose to you once more, as long as you come back. You can't just leave me all alone." I couldn't help but laugh. What does it mean that he can't be left alone? "Mason, is Tibet fun?" he cried. "Back then, you also left me alone at the wedding venue. Do you now feel the way I felt at that time? Nina, Nina." He cried so hard that he could barely catch his breath, just murmuring my name. Suddenly, he clutched his head, writhing in pain on the ground, foam spilling from his mouth. The barrage of comments startled him, and many people noticed that something was off. I was startled too. "Please don't let anything happen at my doorstep." I called the police and also requested an ambulance. I heard news about Mason again more than 10 days later. Our family returned from abroad, and Mason's dad explained the situation to my dad. He had been in a coma in the intensive care unit for over 10 days. After all, my dad is Mason's father's colleague, so he brought some things to the hospital to visit Mason once. When he came back, my dad had an indescribable expression, his brows tightly furrowed. I could see that Mason was feeling down about this. My dad said. My mom tightened her grip on my hand. "What on earth is going on? Wasn't he in good health before? How did he suddenly get such a serious illness?" My dad sat down, took a sip of water, and seemed to think of something, shivering slightly before he began to tell us about Mason's condition. The doctor said he has an unknown parasite in his brain, and they don't know how he got infected. It is said that the parasite has already eaten a third of his brain. My mom and I both shuddered. A parasite? How did Mason get infected with a parasite? But then a piece of online news caught my attention. The well-known travel blogger Tian Shu has issued an obituary. This is Tina's short video account. I haven't heard her name in a while, and I didn't expect that she had also encountered trouble. The obituary stated that Tina died from a parasitic infection caused by eating undercooked meat, and despite several days of treatment, she could not be saved. It was indeed a parasite. It's hard not to connect this with Mason. Could they have been infected by the same type of parasite? To be safe, my mom had me go to the hospital for a full checkup, fearing that I might also have this parasite in my body. After finishing my checkup at the hospital, I took a glance at Mason in the intensive care unit. He had lost so much weight that he looked emaciated, his body filled with tubes, and even so, he still appeared utterly exhausted. "Nina, thank you for coming to see Mason," Mason's father said, wiping his tears beside me. Seeing him like this, I felt bad too. "Uncle, take care of your health." "I'm fine, Nina, I apologize on behalf of Mason, it's all his fault that it turned out this way. He deserves it." I caught on to a key point. "What do you mean it's his own doing? Do you know how he got infected with the parasite?" Mason's father nodded. "When I was young, I met a merchant from Tibet who once said that there is a kind of poisonous insect there that specifically eats human brains. A few days ago, I asked that merchant, and Mason most likely got infected by that kind of insect. Once infected, it's a death sentence. So it was Tibet. No wonder Tina got infected too." A few days later, Mason passed away in the intensive care unit. I didn't go to his funeral, instead, I went to see Andy. After talking with him, I paid and prepared to leave. Andy called out to me, "Nina." I replied, Andy said, "We've finished our paid conversation, how about we talk about something that isn't paid? My professionalism tells me that you already have the ability to start a new relationship, and if you happen to have that intention, may I?" I was greatly puzzled. I really hadn't noticed that Andy had feelings for me. "Really?" I chuckled awkwardly and refused, "Andy, I'm not planning to find a boyfriend for now. After being entangled with Mason for so many years, I want to enjoy my time alone." He wasn't embarrassed and said generously, "All right, I wish you a happy time alone." I walked out of his office. Naturally, I didn't see that after I left, the gentle expression on his face instantly vanished, replaced by a forced smile as he stared at the computer screen. He was spinning a pen in his hand. After a long while, he scoffed, "What a pity." I naturally didn't see that on his computer screen was a bizarre, entirely black caterpillar-like creature, quietly lying on a long, pale hand as if it had been tamed. In the center of that hand's wrist, there is a mole the size of a grain of rice.